Hello, my name is Jacqueline Pollauf, and today I wanted to talk about my new exercise book called Glissando Exercises, which has just been published in the fall of 2020. And it's a book of 50 incremental exercises, all focused on playing glissandos on the harp. In approach, it's similar to my previous exercise books, Pedal Exercises for Harp and Exercises in Harmonics, in that it really focuses in very closely on one skill and works through it in a lot of different scenarios. It's a very thorough approach. So what I wanted to do today is I wanted to give some samples of these exercises and how I would work through them with students. So I'm going to play about 6 different exercises from the 50 exercises in the book, and I'll talk a little bit about each one and what you might focus on, and then play through it as an example. So throughout the book, there are a lot of different glissando techniques covered. There's ascending and descending glissandos, crossing glissandos, overlapping glissandos, glissandos with turnarounds, glissandos ending on particular pitches, parallel glissandos, multiple glissandos in one hand, a lot of different stuff. And the exercises that I've picked out today will show kind of a smattering of those different techniques. But another interesting aspect of the book is there's a lot of emphasis on the details surrounding glissandos. So of course, if I'm working with a student, I want them to be comfortable with all of the different types of glissandos that I just outlined. But I also want them to be comfortable sort of no matter the surrounding situation of a glissando in a piece of music. So within each exercise in the book, a new technique is introduced or explored a little bit further. But then also it goes through sort of scientifically all these different approaches. So there are glissandos equally used with each hand, so you'll be comfortable using either hand no matter the type of glissando. Glissandos using different ranges of strings, different lengths, different rhythmic values, so that you can work through all of these different sort of scenarios for a particular glissando technique, and then you'll be ready to play glissandos no matter what form they might take within a piece of music. I'm going to start with glissando exercise number 1, which is of course the simplest exercise in the book, and it's subtitled Ascending Glissandi with the final note in the opposite hand. So the skill that's being worked on here is playing a glissando going up the harp, and then when you reach the top string, you're going to play it with the other hand. So throughout this, I'll be thinking about a couple of things. One is the position of my finger on the string for the glissando. Generally, I like to make sure that I have enough of my finger on the string that I don't catch the nail, and that I have kind of a horizontal position like this to get a nice clean sound. And then I'm also going to use the same finger, finger number 2, for the note at the top. There are fingering suggestions provided throughout the book, but you could use other fingering based on what your preferences are. As I play, the details surrounding the glissando will change. So I will be alternating right and left hands as marked in the music so that I play an equal number of glissandos with each hand. And then the rhythmic value of the glissando will continually change, and the range of the glissando, the length of it, will periodically change. So here is glissando exercise number 1. Next, I wanted to look at glissando exercise number 10, descending and ascending with one hand. So we've jumped ahead quite a few exercises, and in this one, the focus is on turnarounds at the bottom of a glissando. So you're coming down, and then you flip around and come right back up. So it's one continuous glissando, down and up, all in one hand. And to do that, I'm thinking about using my thumb for the descending glissando as usual. And then right here, I kind of gliss up a little bit this direction, and then I'm just going to flip over to the second finger when I reach the top and come back around like this. And one aspect of glissandos of this type that I always work with students on is making sure that they don't skip any strings. It's very easy, particularly with this type of glissando, but really this applies to all glissandos, that when you get to the end, maybe you just gliss to here and then your second finger jumps out, so you have a whole gap of strings that you're not playing when you start your glissando back up. And instead, you want to gliss every single string right up to the one where you're flipping around. So as with the previous exercise, the technical skill will remain the same throughout this, but the details will change. I'll be alternating hands, and as marked, I will also be adjusting the range and the rhythm of the glissandos. Here is Glissando exercise number 10. This next exercise is Glissando Exercise 21, subtitled Continuous Crossing Glissandi. And so we've done a bit of a jump again from 10 to 21, and we've skipped a few steps in the incremental progression. But in this glissando, the skill that's being worked on is playing glissandos in opposite directions between the hands, but just continuing on like this. So at the top and the bottom of each glissando, you have to do a turnaround, like we were just looking at in number 10, but you have to be doing turnarounds in both hands in opposite directions at the same time. And there are a few steps that build up to this. You don't just get thrown into it. So I think a great thing to think about with something like this is that the speed of your glissando matches. So some people, this is quite easy to do, have a tendency to speed up on the easy parts of the glissando and slow down on the trickier parts. So with something like this, they might go faster in the middle and then really slow down while they think about the turnaround and then speed back up. But of course, in a great glissando, what you really want is for everything to be very equal and controlled. Like so. So here is Glissando exercise number 21. And it includes, like the others, variations in terms of rhythm and range, which you will hear as I play it. So now we are on to Glissando exercise 24, subtitled Descending Glissandi, ending in a scale passage. And this is from a section of the book that is devoted to glissandos that end with different types of endings. So some end in thirds, and chords, and octaves. But in this particular one, you're ending with a group of 4 notes like this. So you gliss along with one hand, and then the other hand plays 4 notes very quickly. This is a highly specific type of ending. It generally comes up in music written by harpist composers. I can think of some pieces off the top of my head that Grangeni and Salzedo both wrote that use this type of ending. And it's really just to give you a very precise finish to your glissando. So rather than glissing to the last note, instead you play the last 4 notes, and it just makes it a little bit more defined. So in playing this gliss, really, or not just this gliss, but this whole gliss exercise, really the challenge is not hearing a big change between your gliss and the notes that you're playing. So you don't want to go suddenly much slower when you get there. That's not really the idea. Instead, you want to just kind of keep flowing. So that if you had your eyes closed, or the audience had their eyes closed, they would be unable to tell where you switched from a gliss to playing with the other hand. So here is Glissando Exercise number 24. Let's jump ahead to Glissando Exercise 35, double glissandi with 2 hands in parallel fifths. So in this, your hands are moving in the same direction, but you have to maintain the distance of a fifth between them. And that can be quite challenging because if one hand is glissing a little faster or slower than the other hand, the distance will change and will no longer be a fifth. So it requires definitely some practice and a good amount of control over the speed of your glisses to be able to do that precisely. And in this exercise, as with all the others, there's a lot of changes throughout the exercise with the range and the rhythm of each gliss. Many people find that the slow, short glisses are the most challenging because they really take a lot of control to do something like this. It's much easier to go a little bit faster and a little bit longer. But all of the exercises rotate through all of the different combinations of speed and length to give you a chance to work on all of these, the ones that maybe you find more comfortable and the ones that you find less comfortable. I think practicing with a metronome is a great approach for this book of exercises because that can really force you to lock in on your rhythm and make sure that you're not cheating some of them. In general, putting your metronome on kind of a medium speed I think is best. For a lot of harp music, slower is easier because it gives you more time. But for exercises like these with the glissandos, slower is not necessarily any easier because then your slow, short glisses get even slower, sometimes to the point where they're almost unplayable. So I would go for kind of a metronome marking in the middle, maybe around, say, 100 for the quarter note. I'll go ahead and play Glissando Exercise 35 now. Finally today, I wanted to look at Glissando Exercise 43, simultaneous double glissandi with both hands. So we've leapt over quite a few of the incremental steps that set this up, but what's happening in this exercise is you're playing a double glissando with both hands, so you have a quadruple glissando total. And to do that, most people within the classical harp world use fingers 2 and 3 and pull them along the strings. For myself and many other harpists, you can actually use a modified hand position. So rather than having your fingers on the strings normally, you can have your fingers pointing up, which is really strange. This is not a normal way that we play the harp. But if you have your fingers pointing up vertically, a lot of times it makes for a cleaner sound with this double glissando. And then actually coming back down is really similar. So rather than using your thumb to descend, most people use fingers 2 and 3 to come down. And then again, the modified hand position. So you're pointing both up and back this way a little bit and dragging the fingers back down. If you're looking at this glissando, if you have a copy of the book in front of you, you'll notice that like many of the other exercises, there are quite a few ledger lines involved in this first line of the exercise. It can be a bit hard to read. And because this book uses such a big range of strings, there's a lot of ledger lines all over the book, and a few 8VAs as well. But what I generally do when I'm playing is I just look at the patterns, because it's always just moving by an octave. So you can always read a lower staff and then jump up the octave and find your notes pretty easily that way. So here is Glissando Exercise 43, and I'll go ahead and use the strange hand position all throughout the exercise. I hope, as always, that you found this video helpful. And if you're interested in more information about playing glissandos on the harp, I have another video or two covering the topic from some different angles. So I'll put some links below in the description for that. And I will also, of course, put links for the new book, Glissando Exercises, places to purchase below in the description as well. Really what I'm hoping with this book is that any interested harpist who wants to make sure that their glissando skills are excellent in all different types of glissandos with all different types of scenarios has a resource for that, a book where they can maybe just target some of the skills that they struggle with or maybe work through really systematically. But either way, they'll have something they can turn to help in their pursuit of excellent glissandos.